Hello. So today let's build an API that can get a random image from Airtable. So what we have here is an Airtable base with random images that were generated by DALL-E. And if I go to my grid view, I can see there's a prompt, there's the attachments where I have the images and a category. So our goal is to create an API that hits this Airtable, gets all the records, chooses a random image and returns the URL of that. Great. So now let's try to build that in Craftar. So I'll come in here and create a new API. I'll call it get random image from Airtable. I'll click on create. Awesome. So now the first thing we need is to actually get the data from Airtable. So I'll right click, go to databases. Inside Airtable, I have a block called get Airtable records. So this needs an API key, a base ID, table ID, number of records. I'll just set it to 100, view ID. So now how to get these three values? There's another block inside databases Airtable called get Airtable config from URL. So it's a helper block. What it does, it takes in the URL of the table and returns the three things we need. So we'll just go back to Airtable, copy the URL. We'll come in here and paste it inside the URL of this block. Great. So now I can connect. I'll connect the input block to get Airtable config from URL and I'll connect this to output. Nice. So I need the API key. So I'll get the API key quickly. And then I'll connect the base ID to base, table ID to table, and view ID to view. Great. So now we can just test if we get the records from Airtable. I'll just click on play. So we see it extracted the base ID, table ID, and view ID from URL. Now it's hitting Airtable. Awesome. So now if I look at records, I got all the images that I had in my Airtable. And if I look at it, the data is inside attachment 0 and URL. This is what I need. And there are like 18 records. So now I'll have to select one of those. So I'll just right click and click on random. Great. So I have like this block, which is what I need. It gets a random item from a list. So I'll call it after get Airtable records, pass the records as data to this block. And now this item will be a random item each time. So we can test this again. And I can click on play. Nice. So if I look at my item, I get just one of those items. And the prompt is baby builds 2D art stylized. And I have this URL. And I'll just like quickly open it in the browser. Great. So now if I run this again, I should probably get a different one because there are only 18 items. Yeah, so you can see the prompt is different. And if I go to my attachments, I can just quickly test this image. Great. So now I'm getting like a random image every time I'm calling this API. So now let's just extract. So if you see, it's returning a big JSON with attachment 0. So let's say we only want the URL. So what we can do is we can use a couple of blocks to help us. So if we go to logic, helper functions, we have a block get value by key from JSON. So it takes a JSON object. So our item is a single JSON object. And what we want is to extract attachments. So if we run this, so now we can see we just got the attachments value, but now we want the 0th item in that. So we have another block. We'll just go to logic, helper functions, get item from list by index, right? So this is a list of attachments. We want the 0th item of the list. So we'll pass the value to data and our index will be 0. So now we'll get like the only the item now. So if we can just play this. So now we got the final item that we need, and the last thing that we need to do is extract this URL. So we'll just do that once more. We'll reuse this block again. Get value by key from JSON. Great. So in this time, the value that we need is URL. Great. And now we'll create an API output. We'll call this URL, and this is of type text. And we'll just connect this here. Awesome. So now if I save and play this, we'll hit random, we'll go to Airtable, get a random item from the list, do some data transformation, and finally we get a URL. Great. So now I can just copy this and test it once more. Great. So we're getting a random image each time. I'll save again, publish. Great. So now my API is live. Now I can test it in my browser. So every time I hit this API, I'll get a random URL from that Airtable. I'll hit it again. Great. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.